Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Katerina Sekvencová, and I serve as Vice President of the Assembly of States Parties, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm pleased to welcome you to the second and final session of the virtual public roundtables with candidates for Registrar of the International Criminal Court. Again, I'd like to thank the court and its registry in particular for providing us with the technical support to carry out this roundtable in the virtual format. The roundtable is being streamed online and recordings will be made available online afterwards. Let me inform you that 2 candidates out of the 12 shortlisted withdrew their candidature. These were Ms. Kate McIntosh from first session and Mr. Amadi Ba from today's session. As you know, we have 2 sessions in total, 5 candidates for each session. The division of the candidates to the respective sessions was decided by drawing lots at the last Hague Working Group meeting of 15 September. I'm moderating the 2 sessions on behalf of states parties. I'm also pleased to welcome 2 representatives of civil society who are acting as co-moderators, Ms. Evelyn Ankuma from Africa Legal Aid and Ms. Alejandra Vicente from Redress. Today's co-moderator will be Alejandra Vicente. I'm pleased to welcome the candidates for Registrar in today's session, and that is in alphabetical order. Mr. Luis Mariano Hermosillo Sosa, Ms. Gabrielle McIntyre, Ms. Rosette Muzigo Morrison, Mr. Ibrahim James Pam, Mr. Osvaldo Zavala Giler. Thank you all for being with us today. Before we begin, in order to assist the interpreters with their work, I'd like to ask all of the candidates to please pause for a few seconds before beginning to speak when they are giving the floor. This will ensure that the interpretation can run smoothly. In order to minimize interruptions, we would also like to request candidates to only speak when the floor is given to them by the moderators and to mute their microphone when they have finished speaking. For the first segment of our roundtable, we will give each of the candidates an opportunity to make an introductory statement outlining their candidacies and their visions for the role of registrar. We'll have these statements in alphabetical order, and candidates have been given up to four minutes each. I would kindly ask you to respect the allocated time in all the sections. That means for the introduction, when answering the questions, and also for your closing remarks. Now I would like to invite Mr. Luis Mariano Hermosillo Sosa for the introductory remarks. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Vice President, and to all the participants in this roundtable. C'est un honneur d'être avec vous.
It's an honor for me to be with you here today at this roundtable.
An honor to be here to introduce you how the special combination of experience and skills I have and my passion and dedication to service social causes can make a solid contribution to the court's ability to deliver its mandate. I identify that the court has, 1, a clear diagnosis from experts with findings and recommendations, 2, strategic plans for the next 3 years, and 3, the 2023 program budget proposal. If elected, I will implement the planned actions, verify their effectiveness, and correct any deviation to then iterate and thus achieve continuous improvement of the processes. The court's increasing number of situations and cases and the difficulty for states parties in increasing their quotas challenges the court's ability to fulfill its mandate. The incoming registrar must coordinate and work very close with the ASP and CDF to agree with the cost efficiency criteria on the assumptions for the formulation and justification of the budget proposals. Once the budget is approved, the registrar must coordinate with the other organs of the court to implement it within the financial limits, achieving the committed results. For 21 years, I coordinated the planning and formulation of the program budgets of 3 different Mexican ministries, being the most complex, that of the Ministry of Public Education with several programs and $35 billion a year, always finding efficiencies while meeting unforeseen needs. In terms of fair and expeditious trials, I will contribute my skills to streamline the workflows of the services provided by the registry and establish service standards, monitor their compliance, and implement continuous improvement actions, and also to improve the functionality of the information systems for document management and the logistics of the judiciary. I have led business process engineering and continuous improvement, as well as management information systems projects, achieving ISO 9000 standard certification for the budget processes of 2 ministries. It is essential to further improve attracting, developing, and keeping the court's officers and administrative staff productive and motivated. It is also imperative to continue advancing in achieving equitable geographic representation and gender equality, as well as achieving a safe workplace free from any misconduct that should not be tolerated at all. As a former commissioner to the United Nations ICC and head of HR of 2 relevant Mexican financial institutions, I will firmly advance on these issues. My background and skills will also allow me to contribute strongly to 1, improve the comprehensive process of assistance and support to victims, from communication in early stages to participation in trials and reparations, and 2, strengthen cooperation with the state's parties, international organizations, organized civil society, and other relevant stakeholders. My commitment is, if I am elected, if I have the honor of being elected, you can be assured I will work with the maximum of my capacity and my passion to the effectiveness and efficiency of this unique court. I thank you very much. Je suis assessor.
Thank you. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Gabrielle McIntyre. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you. I would like to thank the Vice President of the Assembly of States Parties and civil society representatives for moderating today's session. I'm delighted to be here and honoured to have been shortlisted amongst such stellar contenders for the position of Registrar of the ICC. My candidacy is motivated by my commitment to the success of the court and my belief that I can positively contribute to that success in the position of Registrar. The Registrar is a vital role at a time when the court is in a process of renewal. Perhaps more than ever before, the court needs someone with integrity, commitment to efficiency, willingness to confront directly the challenges faced by the court and to seek new and innovative solutions. All this to enable the court, which plays a critical role in relation to the promotion of the rule of law, the upholding of the principles of international law, to carry forward with its mandate effectively. My decade and a half of leadership experience at the United Nations International Criminal Tribunals has given me unique perspectives on the role of the registrar as a service provider, the integrity, professionalism, and other attributes required of the holder of the post, and the importance of the registrar cultivating relationships of trust and transparency with the other principals of the court. This long experience has also solidified my understanding of the importance of frank and constructive relationships with oversight parent bodies and with civil society actors who have a stake in the success of the court. I would bring to the role of registrar a wealth of ideas towards improving the functioning of the registry, including measures to cultivate a highly motivated and creative workforce whose contributions are recognised and who are provided opportunities for professional growth. I would draw upon my track record in the establishment of transparent workplaces where new ideas are encouraged and diversity is valued, and my long experience as an advocate for gender equality and for promoting women's voices. I would bring my familiarity with budgetary authorities and processes and my deep understanding of the need to effectively communicate the complex needs of an international court to fully justify its resources through the identification of expected results. I would draw upon my expertise in accommodating budget shortfalls through creative approaches and seek to bolster the confidence of state parties in the value of their investment in the court. Related to this, I would also bring my proficiency in raising voluntary funds, and with the approval of the President, I would explore creative opportunities for raising additional funding from a range of sources, which may also serve to raise awareness of the court among the world's populations. In that regard, I would bring my extensive experience of outreach and communications in justice settings, and under the authority of the President, I would continue to improve the outreach and communication strategies of the court, and specifically with situation countries and victim communities, through close cooperation with the other organs, civil society, and communication experts.
Ms.
I
McIntyre,
would seek to strengthen.
yeah, I will
I'm talking
kindly
too
ask
fast,
you,
like
yeah, I'll
forever.
kindly ask you to close up your introductory statement.
Okay, sorry, it must be my slower talking. So thank you very much. I would work to reset the reputation of the ICC as an institution of which we can be proud. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like now to give the floor to Ms. Rosette Muzigo Morrison. You have the floor, ma'am.
Madam Vice President, distinguished representatives of social society, civil society, fellow candidates, and the entire globe. When I attended the Rome Conference in 1998, at which conference the ICC was born, I acted alongside the tutor registrar of the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. And my role was simple. It entailed demonstrating the states parties, who were then UN member states, international organizations, civil society, and the entire globe, how their visions, inspirations, and the dreams for a world free of criminality could be translated from word to practice. 24 years here, later on, at a time when the court is at crossroads and needing reform, as we gather from the independent expert report, I appear before a common audience, firstly to avow my unwavering commitment and dedication to the causes that we had in Rome, renewed in Kampala, where again I had the opportunity to participate and honorably offer myself to spearhead the role of delivering administrative support and services for the court as registrar. In my understanding, there are a few issues that we have to deal with at the court. The 28 years that I have spent pioneering the creation of witness victim support services, the years which I have spent creating practice direction services at the Rwanda Tribunal and at the Special Court for Sierra Leone, the years that I have spent investigating sexual abuse, exploitation, harassment, and bullying are the reason why I applied to be registrar, because I have the experience, practical experience, I have the knowledge and the skills to do so. There is an urgent need for the court to build the trust of the people who are used as vehicles to deliver service. And I speak about the staff, I speak about motivation, I speak about getting rid of predatory behavior, I speak about engaging with civil society and affected communities. I speak about taking the court to the witnesses and victims and making the participation of the people for whom this court was created and it distinguished itself from its precursors to be a victim-centered court. Such participation must be achievable, accessible, and meaningful. If I am appointed as registrar, this will be a top priority.
Ms. Morrison,
Gender priority.
Ms. Morrison, I will kindly ask you to close up your statement.
State cooperation, gender and geographical balancing will to be my priority. I thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Ibrahim James Pam. Mr. Pam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, Excellencies, dear colleagues. The promulgation of the Rome Statute and the establishment of the International Criminal Court was a triumph of multilateralism and a further validation by the global community of the aspiration expressed in the Charter of the United Nations to free succeeding generations from the scourge of war. The International Criminal Court represents the triumph of a regime of laws that elevate the human aspiration for justice and defend the most vulnerable in society from the terror and injustice of the worst crimes known to man. This noble mission of the court is one that deeply resonates with me and is at the heart of my motivation to become the 5th registrar. In my professional career, I've had the privilege to serve the cause of justice at both national and international levels. After a 32-year career in law, human rights, international criminal justice, oversight and accountability, and having worked in the Office of the Prosecutor as analyst and investigator for over 6 years in its early life between 2005 and 2012, I have a personal and professional commitment to continuing to promote the cause of international criminal justice and to advancing the work of the court. My commitment is also founded on my early life experiences in the context of a national conflict that enable me in a unique way to connect victimhood and ICC such that I can readily converge the realities of both. I'm prepared for the challenge of becoming the registrar of the International Criminal Court with primary responsibility to lead the provision of administrative and judicial services and convening the support of states parties, civil society, and other stakeholders. My vision, should I be elected registrar of the International Criminal Court, is founded on 4 main ambitions. One, acting under the authority of the President to execute the statutory responsibilities of the registry by providing efficient support impartially and transparently in all non-judicial matters that are the remit of the registry. I will be guided in this by a strict adherence to the principle of equality of arms in judicial proceedings and the obligation to protect the integrity of the processes, decisions, and judgments of the International Criminal Court. And two, maximizing the efficiency of court administration by delivering high-quality, reliable court services, particularly in information technology, translations and interpretation, records management, court security, security of court processes, and the management of victims and witnesses. Three, creating a respectful and safe workplace for all staff of the court, in which staff are self-motivated to optimize their productivity in an environment that protects their physical, mental, and psychological well-being. Psychological safety is of paramount concern, and it is essential for the court to guarantee a workplace that is free from any forms of harassment and discrimination, and one that ensures that its personnel are able to exercise their full potential without fear or uncertainty. And four, enhancing support towards the court by states parties by redefining the value proposition of the court and ensuring efficiency in its administration and operations, and also generating ownership of the court and the Rome Statute by communities impacted by the work of the court. I would seek to promote further active collaboration as well with civil society. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Osvaldo Zavala Giller. Mr. Zavala, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Vice President, Excellencies, colleagues. My career is a testament to my dedication to the court and its success. For 17 years, I have served the ICC and the Rome Statute system in different capacities. To be given now the opportunity to serve as the next registrar of the court would allow me to put to the service of the ICC the vast institutional knowledge I possess and the lessons I have learned over the past years by working with the three previous registrars. Throughout my time at the ICC, I have directly contributed to the effective functioning of the registry in all areas under its responsibility, including the non-judicial aspects of the administration and servicing of the court and the Office of the Prosecutor, and the effective implementation of registry's duty to provide efficient and effective services to the judges and the judicial proceedings. I believe in responsible leadership. To lead responsibly as registrar means, on the one hand, to exercise authority on a decisive and strategic manner to effectuate results. But it also means to be held accountable for my actions and my decisions. This interrelation between authority and accountability is at its best when leadership is exercised with a clear understanding of the complexities of the job, of what needs to be done and how to achieve it. In addition to possessing a thorough understanding of the technical requirements of the court's operation, I bring real insight into the strategic relevance of its mandate. Now, this insight is of particular value for the registry, not only in presenting a coherent and cohesive vision and persuasive vision for its future, but also on the practical impact it has on the effective delivery of its responsibilities. Madam Vice President, in times of shifting challenges, in times of heightened expectations, I am convinced that the court requires a registrar that leads with energy and commitment, a reinvigorated vision into the future, but a vision that is rooted on a solid technical and strategic understanding of the mandate of the court. Importantly, the next registrar must also embody and reflect the evolving values that the international community demands today of the institutions that represent it. As registrar, my calling would be to continue building on the legitimacy of the ICC by ensuring its operational sustainability and by strengthening the trust and respect for its justice mandate. I stand ready and able to take this important step in my long-standing service to the court by transforming into opportunities my comprehensive experience in all areas of the work of the registry to meet the challenges ahead. I am guided by the vision of building a model of modern public administration that ensures effectiveness, that safeguards accountability, and that encourages a working environment that promotes professionalism, respect, diversity, equality, and inclusion, values which I strive to represent myself. To achieve this, I am committed to devoting to this institution and to those it was established to serve. My vision, my experience, my skills, my energy to support the operational effectiveness of the court and thus contribute to preserving its legacy and strengthening its future. Thank you very much, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. That concludes the opening statements. We will now begin the segment with questions for the candidates submitted by the state's parties. We have allocated approximately 45 minutes for this segment. I'll ask the candidates to limit their responses to a maximum of 3 minutes for the first question and a maximum of 2 minutes for the following 2 questions. The candidates will be called to respond to the questions in a random order. For the first question, the order of the speakers will be as follows: Ms. McIntyre, Ms. Muzigo Morrison, Mr. Pam, Mr. Zavala, and Mr. Hermosillo. Describe your experience managing large court or institutional budgets. Please explain the budget amount that you are responsible for executing in your current workplace. In addition, how would you address the liquidity issue that the ICC is currently facing? Ms. McIntyre, the floor is yours.
So with respect to the first part of the question, describe your experience of managing court institutional budgets. My experience really derives from my role as Chef de Cabinet Principal Legal Advisor to the President with supervisory authority over the Registrar at the International Criminal Tribunals, a position that I held for some 15 years. In that role, the Registrar was effectively the person responsible for the budget, but budget preparation was a collaborative effort. It involved all section chiefs preparing their budget, justifying their needs, and then it was subject to review by the President. Budgets were $120, $150 million. My role would be to prepare the President's needs for that budget, as well as the justifying narrative, as well as reviewing and assisting the chambers in the preparation and identification of their budgetary needs, the chambers falling under the authority of the President, and also reviewing overall the budget being presented by the Registrar, and making sure that the President agreed with those budgetary items and they were justified. The day-to-day management of the budget was in the hands of technical staff that were employed for that purpose, but there were reporting obligations to the President, and there were many occasions where the President and the Registrar and other principals or section chiefs of the tribunal would meet together to try and meet invariably unforeseen budgetary costs that arise through identifying measures that we could take to reduce costs elsewhere to meet those needs. The budget in the place that I'm currently working is a fraction of the budget of the ICC. It's a very small budget. It's less than $1 million US. However, In that capacity, I am responsible as the Principal Administration Officer for the identification, justification of that budget for full compliance with all financial rules and regulations in the country in which I am situated, procurement and tender processes, audit processes, and I have drawn upon my experience from the tribunals, and I believe that the managerial principles that apply are the same. With respect to liquidity issues facing the ICC, I think we really need more assistance from the ASP. The independent expert review identified some measures that could be taken, but also bilateral engagement by the court should continue. Payment plans, anything we can to address those issues, they need to be explored further. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Muzigo Morrison, the floor is yours. You are muted, ma'am. You have to put your microphone on.
I had the opportunity and privilege of working in the immediate office of the Registrar of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda at the time of its inception. It was a time when the registry opened with a zero budget. So the registrar literally had to take out a begging bowl and ask friends of the Rwanda Tribunal to provide money to start. Over the years, in my capacity as assistant, I participated in the discussion and the putting together of budgets, different budgets from the different sections. And that continued when I was mandated to start from scratch a registry office for the Rwanda Tribunal in The Hague. And the experience was once again repeated when I had established a satellite office for the Special Court for Sierra Leone for the trial of the former president of Charles Taylor. Global justice is highly expensive. And this is something that we all agree on. One of the techniques that was used and was successful, and I would seek to use if I am appointed registrar of the ICC, considering the increasing number of situations and the narrowing of budgets, which has been affected because of the current circumstances. There is COVID, there is the war. I would use a technique of transparency and productivity. Once the registrar is transparent about issues, explaining why changes are needed, adjustments are needed. Once the registrar engages with the state parties ahead of time, before the CBF meets, in the case of the UN, the Fifth Committee, and explains the complications, the need, state parties are inclined to support such a budget, and I will use the same. Secondly, I will use productivity. State parties like to see evidence, result of where their money is going. I will make sure that I change the work environment that enables staff members to participate to their maximum. Thirdly, I will draw upon Article 116 to engage with international corporations and other sources, universities, and all those who are willing to work together to stamp out the evils of criminality. This aspect needs to be handled carefully because there is
Ms.
a
Morrison, Ms.
of
Morrison,
market funds.
I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you very much for answering the question. Next speaker on my list is Mr. Pham. Mr. Pham, you have the floor.
Thank you, Excellency. So currently I work at the Green Climate Fund. The annual budget of the institution is just short of $84 million, the administrative budget. I'm responsible as head of the Independent Integrity Unit and interim head of the Independent Redress Mechanism for a budget that's combined budget slightly under $5 million. Essentially, I think budgeting is an annual iterative process. Therefore, it starts at the very beginning with a strategic vision and a strategic plan. Deriving from the strategic planning, then operational plan and activities can then be costed and then budgeted. My approach has always been to engage in early discussions over the strategic vision and the strategic plan of the institution. Clearly, strategic planning could be over 3 years, but in relation to an annual budget, once those early discussions have been initiated, then the consultations that need to happen will be undertaken with the budgeting authority. With the ICC, I think clearly there is a need to deepen those engagements at the early stages of budget planning in order to more clearly articulate what exactly the objectives and the budget are and the essential elements of the activities that would be funded by the budget. Clearly, there is a funding gap in the ICC. I think that is very well acknowledged. Civil society makes the case about the cost of international criminal justice compared with the cost of conflict. And I think this clearly illustrates that a budget of under $170 million for the ICC is very much inadequate. What the challenge of the registrar would be is to articulate exactly what the constraints of this sort of budget is. In other words, to engage early with states parties, but also to engage with the heads of organs, the other principals of the court, as well as internally with staff members, to generate a budget that more adequately addresses the requirements of. I think what this implicates is an extensive discussion with states, but very importantly, the support of civil society in driving the agenda. The current state of conflicts globally suggests to us that the states parties need to assign far more resources to this court as an accountability, global accountability mechanism. Therefore, that's what I will commit to. Early planning, to articulating a results-based budget, but also the other element of accountability by ensuring that there is proper budget execution. And so, for example, reducing vacancy rates within the court, making sure that we go well below, currently I think is about 21% vacancy rate, and driving that down substantially so that at the end of the budget cycle, we can report a high level of budget execution in order to generate further support for increased budgeting in the year to come. But essentially, we need to show a better value proposition in order to encourage states parties to provide more resources, which currently $170 million for the court is slightly less than the budget for the police in the city of Minneapolis, for example. Really inadequate. And that would be my goal, to generate more resources by providing a better value proposition, in order to also show accountability for the use of the fund.
Thank you very much. Now I'll ask Mr. Zavala. Mr. Zavala, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. Madam Vice President, I have a deep understanding of the budget process at the ICC, and in particular, its connection to the policy and strategic aspects of the court's operation. As Chief of Budget, I oversee the overall implementation of the ICC budget, which currently stands at 151.3 million euros. And I provide control to the resources throughout the court through sound management and good practices. In regards to the registry's budget in particular, which right now stands at 79.2 million euros, I am directly responsible for its strategic implementation, for ensuring the proper prioritization of resources, especially in order to address changing operational developments and the judicial needs. In this capacity, I also analyze data regarding its implementation in order to identify redundancies or deficiencies. I manage also the overall budget process for its budget proposal for the ICC, including the creation of objectives and the alignment with the strategic priorities and risk management. Now, with regards to your question about liquidity, I think there's two aspects to this. One of them is a structural mechanism aspect, and the other one is a strategic component. The first structural mechanisms, the first solution needs to be to have the working capital fund, so the necessary precautionary reserves at the appropriate level that demand the standards of practice today. As you know, both the Committee on Budget and Finance, but also auditors have recommended that the working capital fund of the court stays as a level that represents at least 1 month of its operations. Currently, right now, that level is insufficient. Other possibilities have also been put in place, like the creation of payment plans and offering this to states that can and will enter into them. Now, the issue of arrears and outstanding contributions, more particularly, is of course a shared responsibility with the Assembly of States parties. In this regard, the Registrar provides support to the efforts of the Assembly, the Hague Working Group facilitator, for example. And this support is through the provision of information, creating open channels of communication, mostly. The issue of outstanding contributions must be looked at it on a case-by-case basis. First of all, we need to understand the context, and we need to provide clear information and transparent information to the states in question, and engage with them through active listening, where we are honest and providing the transparent information, and they explain to us the possibilities and how to support the court with their financial contribution. Thank you very much, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. And now I'll ask Mr. Hermosillo. You have the floor, sir.
Very much, Vice President. I think budget management is one of my best skills. My experience includes 21 years as Director General for Program Planning, Budget and Organization in 3 different ministries of the federal Mexican government: economy, foreign affairs, and public education, as well as having been CFO of the largest private pension fund in Mexico. I currently advise on budget matters to the Mexican government agency responsible for coordinating the implementation of the national policy on gender equality. During those years, I coordinated the planning and execution of the program budgets of the ministries. I kept the accounts, redesigned procedures, I implemented information systems, and also quality management systems based on the standard ISO 9000. I resolved a large number of situations. I was member of boards of directors and of committees on control on audit as well. I was accountable to audit bodies and also to the chambers of deputies of my country, always with a clean record. However, I believe that the importance of a budget begins with the planning of the scenarios and the assumptions that will be considered for its formulation. So it is not only about managing efficiently a budget, it's about having the skills of planning the program and the assumptions that are going to be considered in the formulation of the budget. In the case of the court, the registry must work more closely with the ASP and CBF to strengthen the confidence that the proposed budget is the essential for the fulfillment of the court's mandate. I think this is very important, that the ASP is confident that we are proposing a budget which considers cost efficiency criteria, that there is a rational austerity in the expenditures, and that above all, the states parties have difficulties in achieving increases from their legislative bodies that limit them to finance incremental budgets. My academic background is also a strength when it comes to carrying out planning and budgeting tasks. I studied a master's degree in public administration, as well as diplomas in accounting and finance, and results-based budgeting, among other studies. Without prejudice to finding operational and financial efficiencies and implementing budgetary rationality measures, I consider imperative through the diplomatic channels with the help of the ASP so that their national authorities cover their quotas in a timely manner, probably commissions to present the work of the court and the challenges it faces, and to agree on a payment plan for quotas in arrears, or I don't know. We have to look a good approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I'll turn to the second question. Now the order of the speakers for the second question will be Ms. Musigo Morrison, Mr. Pam, Mr. Zavala, Mr. Hermosillo, and Ms. McIntyre. I'd like to remind you that you have 2 questions for the, 2 minutes for the second question. The ICC is both a court and an international organization with large staff. This constitutes a managerial challenge. Can you give us an example of a situation when you, as a manager, addressed an unexpected development through an innovative approach? So this is 2-minute question. And I'll ask Ms. Musigo Morrison. You have the floor, ma'am.
Madam President, as registrar, as the person delegated the responsibility to establish the registry for the trial of former Liberian president of the Special Court for Sierra Leone, I encountered a challenge of having to bring staff members who otherwise in the UN system would be recruited as field service, but I had to bring them to headquarters where there is no such provision. The measures that I took entailed developing procedures that created what did not exist in the UN, something like a para-professional, whereby these staff could be brought to perform their duties. They could be given some of the benefits that accrue to field service staff, but are not given to general service staff, and yet they were brought here as general staff. That was fundamental. The other problem that I had to solve entailed bringing staff, bringing witnesses and victims from one continent to another. It required cooperation with the states. It required management skills that looked at what needed to be done, and it required a whole overhaul of the process and the manner in which the court was being managed. I believe that the same is required for the ICC. There is a need to overhaul the entire recruitment process, for example, selection process that is currently opaque and unfair, and has resulted in a huge gap and disparity in gender, in geographical balancing, and these are issues, if elected as registrar, that I would address. I would bring the experience that I have in creating policies, to create policies that would act across board so that the one court principle applies to all staff. And I believe that we require the oxygen mask example. We help ourselves.
Thank you very much, Ms. Morrison. Thank you very much for your answer. And I'll ask now Mr. Pam. You have the floor.
Thank you, Excellency. work of the International Criminal Court having a dual character as both a court and a public international institution creates necessity to manage both and to provide the support and assistance that creates efficiencies for both characters of the court. Currently at the Green Climate Fund, I had the challenge and the responsibility to create to support the creation of an internal redress mechanism in order to face the challenge that arose out of the problems that came out of complaints of harassment, discrimination, etc., including racism. And what that challenge meant was we had to adopt a system of adaptive management to create an internal grievance system that includes an ethics function, a dispute resolution function, an ombuds function, and to merge these within the legal framework of the institution in order to both serve the immediate needs of the challenges that were faced by the institution, but also to integrate it within a common UN system of management of public international institutions. This challenge meant that we had to build collaboration through all of the organs of the institution and also build trust among staff members. And this is essentially the approach that I would adopt as registrar to manage situations that arise that require the skills of adaptive management and also the convergence of opinion by the principals and the leadership of the institution in order to build new solutions and to be creative and innovative in the way that we deal with challenges. For the International Criminal Court, certainly these challenges have arisen, and the independent expert review panel provides a good framework for dealing with them. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now I'll ask Mr. Zavala. Mr. Zavala, you have the floor.
Madam Vice President. I can speak about a challenge we faced this year, actually. As you know, that the ICC and other international organizations that are part of the UN Common System faced an in-year increase in staff costs that was quite substantial, actually, because of the unprecedented inflation in many European countries. Now, this additional pressure created a problem or a challenge to our ability to end the year within the envelope of the financial resources allocated. So, of course, we had to do a thorough reprogramming of resources of the registry in order to be able to meet our obligations within the available resources. But to achieve this, we needed to find cost reductions while continuing to provide support to 3 trial activities that are ongoing and, of course, activities of the Office of the Prosecutor in new situations. I have to recall that 75% of the resources of the court are staff costs. So the only flexibility that we have in reality, or the majority of the flexibility that we have, especially so late in the year, is in staff costs itself. In that regard, what we had to do was to reprioritize resources and recruitment plans in order to ensure the strategic continuation of operations. But of course, this meant that tough decisions needed to be taken and deprive resources to some areas of the work of the registry and postpone some additional recruitments that we were counting on this year. Thank you very much, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. I'll now ask Mr. Hermosillo. You have the floor, sir.
Very much, Vice President. When I assumed the position of CFO of the largest pension fund in Mexico, we had the challenge of improving staff engagement. There was motivation, low productivity, and lack of commitment of approximately 4,000 staff. Being CFO, I improved the staff engagement of the institution in 10 percentage points in just 1 year, through improving training, achieving some mobility for staff, implementing an ERP system with a self-service kiosk on HR matters, I believe that staff engagement is very relevant because it has to do with many issues that affect the well-being of the staff. In addition, I would like to comment about the case of the IEC, the IER recommendation of implementing the leadership of the court to adopt and demonstrate a clear commitment to deal with predatory behavior in the workplace and reinforce mechanisms to safely report bullying and harassment in any kind. It is very important, I firmly believe, that the registry should implement a strategy to facilitate all these issues, specifically to improve the mobility of the ICC staff through adequation of job descriptions, training, mentoring of senior officers to junior staff, and horizontal and temporary interchanges between sections, divisions, or even organs. That would be, Madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll now ask Ms. McIntyre. You have the floor, ma'am.
I suppose an example I can use is when the completion strategy, the Security Council issued a resolution determining an end date for the ICTY and the ICTR, and the impact that that had on the institutions at that time that still had quite a considerable caseload, and how we were going to deal with the transition to a new institution, the mechanism that would be a very different institution, and how we would maintain at the same time the level of motivation we needed for our staff to remain in their posts until they were downsized through a downsizing program that was implemented. And there were various tools we designed to try and keep staff motivated to work towards the end of their jobs, particularly those that had long institutional knowledge of cases and knew that they were not in the scheme going to be transferred to the mechanism at the end of the day. We did things like allow for vacant posts to be used to give temporary promotions to people, to be able to develop management skills. We looked to other organizations and sought to implement agreements with them where they would give some preference to our staff in the UN system as staff coming from a downsizing institution. But overall, it was very challenging at that time to retain the staff, but most of all, to retain their morale and have them to work harder and faster towards the completion of their mandates. So I think we adopted many creative measures to reach that goal in the end, and we were successful.
Thank you. Now we'll move to the third question. The order of the speakers for the third question will be Mr. Pam, Mr. Zavala, Mr. Hermosillo, Ms. McIntyre, Ms. Muzigo Morrison. Let me remind you that this is a 2-minute question. The findings of the independent expert review indicated that the court appears to suffer internally from distrust and a culture of fear. What measures would you prioritize to improve the working environment at the ICC? Mr. Pam, you have the floor.
Beg your pardon. Thank you, Excellency. So I currently serve and have done for the last year and a half as chair of the ad hoc external panel on workplace culture for the Office of the Prosecutor. And so I'm very much familiar with the 384 recommendations of the independent expert review panel. Your Excellency, the conclusions were shocking. and the state of staff motivation at the ICC has been described in really unflattering terms. In my view, the ICC needs to recreate itself on the foundations of justice within the institution itself, internal justice. And this means a number of things. One is going back to what I said earlier about creating psychological safety for staff members. We need to build out a culture of respect, a culture of tolerance, of recognition of differences, an understanding of unconscious bias, of dealing respectfully with one another. The impact of this distrustful environment has not only psychological impacts on staff members, but it does also have a financial impact. So there's reduced productivity, and there is generally a lack of proper welfare and well-being. And so my focus in this is to build out, again, going back to having a strong internal grievance mechanism, but primarily to redefine the culture within the court, to rebuild the culture of respect, to regenerate the soul of the ICC as an institution that does not only justice to victims and communities, but justice also to its staff and justice to all stakeholders. I think that the current initiatives that are ongoing, kicked off by the Assembly of State Parties and taken on strongly by the OTAN, is a good example how to proceed.
Thank you very much. I'll now ask Mr. Zavala. Mr. Zavala, you have the floor.
Madam Vice President, I would like to start by saying that I understand and know profoundly the culture of the ICC. And this, of course, was a topic that I discussed with the IER when I was the focal point for the registry during the discussion. Now, as I said in my introduction, building a model of public administration, of modern public administration that promotes a safe working environment would be my priority. And I don't think this is only aspirational. This, I think, is a prerequisite for the success of the court. As I said before, the staff of the court make up over 75% of the resources of the court. Therefore, the operations of the ICC, its operational effectiveness, is directly reliant on the work of its staff. It is the commitment of the staff of the court that ensures that the operations are carried out, even in very challenging contexts. Now, there are different ways to address the issue of workplace culture, and this is something that we should do together with the Staff Union Council and look into this very closely. First, of course, there are policy solutions, including the most recently enactment of the Administrative Instruction on Harassment. There are also initiatives to promote development and motivation. There are also issues of resources, because understaffing causes burnout, matters concerning alternative conflict resolution, matters concerning performance management. But I want to highlight one particular aspect, which is diversity. I think gender, geographical representation, multilingualism, LGBTQ representation, these are not an expectation from external sources. This is key to the success of the court. The lack of balance and diversity promotes a culture of inequity that can lead to abuse. And I believe that a more diverse organization will soften the edges of cultural interaction within the court. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you. I'll now ask Mr. Hermosillo. You have the floor, sir.
Madam, regarding a safe workplace free of threats, harassment, sexual harassment, and abuse of authority are conducts that should not be tolerated at all, especially in a court that is responsible to deliver justice, but also because any person has the right to a workplace free from any threat. The way I have approached this very relevant issue in the places where I have been responsible for HR is through prevention and also the application of disciplinary measures. So I think that the court needs a prevention strategy, but also disciplinary measures, as I know the court has implemented. In my current role as a consultant in 2019, I implemented the Mexican NOM 035 standard on the identification, analysis, and prevention of psychological risk factors at work, generated by acts of workplace violence, discrimination, harassment, bullying, and other misconducts. The implementation of this standard allows the institution to identify risk factors, carry out a program to prevent them, and disseminate a policy and mechanisms for the prevention of risk factors throughout the organization. On the other hand, my participation for 8 years as one of the commissioners to the United Nations ICC grants me knowledge about best practices in some international organizations that could enrich the policy of the ICC. I thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll now ask Ms. McIntyre. The floor is yours.
So, as a first step, I would really like to understand more.
Okay.
Right. I'd like to understand more deeply the causes of the mistrust in the ICC and the causes of the culture of fear.
Más o menos esto.
Widespread it is. Okay. Yeah. How widespread
I think someone is
So,
unmuted, so I'll kindly ask whoever is unmuted to mute yourself. I'm sorry, Ms. McIntyre. You can continue. Sorry about that.
I'm an outsider, so I'd really like to understand where this culture comes from, how widespread it is. The independent expert review identified a perception of a lack of accountability on the part of the leadership, instances of bullying, and the lack of trusted mechanisms. And these are all being addressed by the court, which I think is very positive, particularly the initiative recently taken by the judiciary. But I do think the tone of the working culture is set by the leadership. So it's up to the leadership to lead the staff towards a respectful working culture. For myself personally, if I was elected as registrar, I would lead by example by having respectful relationships, not just within the registry, but with the other organs, and implement measures whereby respectful relationships are important to the staff in separate organs by doing 360 performance review, where chambers can be subject to comments by registry colleagues and vice versa. I wouldn't necessarily do that with the prosecution, given their independence. So I think there's measures you can take to lead the staff towards a more respectful culture, and that is through your own example and treating staff the way you expect them to act and the way you yourself respect to be treated. Establishing more informal mechanisms, creating greater understanding about cultural differences and how we are perceived by others, given their cultural experiences or backgrounds, I think is also important. So raising awareness about different. I also agree with the comment about diversity, and I definitely agree with having way more women in leadership positions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Muzigo Morrison, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Prior to my joining the ICC, I only used to hear that it had a very toxic, acrimonious environment. The years that I spent there left me without doubt that indeed the environment is unconducive. And the recent report of the experts has gone in detail to identify some of the problems. The one issue that has not been addressed is why it has continued unrelentingly. There is a need to establish a mechanism to protect victims of bullying, harassment, whistleblowers from retaliation. Only when staff members are assured of protection, only then do they report this misconduct. The recent engagement report at the court indicated that very, very small percentages have confidence in the independent oversight mechanism. Where does this come from? One of the issues I think that needs to be dealt with is the manner in which selection and recruitment for jobs is done at the court. It is not possible that all the other regions, geographical regions, cannot produce competent candidates for higher level positions, which at the moment are a monopoly of WIOG. I believe that there is an urgent need to overhaul the entire system to end the hypocrisy of transparency in the selection process, which allows managers to select their friends to participate in the recruitment process and put their friends as the best candidates. That needs to be done because it leaves a lot of anger, it leaves a sense of injustice, and that needs to be done. Diversity needs to be addressed, geographical balance needs to be addressed, staff well-being needs to be addressed. We cannot be talking about justice outside without practicing it.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. We now turn to the second segment of today's second session, questions submitted by civil society. We have allocated approximately 30 minutes for this segment. Now I'd like to give the floor to the co-moderator representing civil society, Ms. Alejandra Vicente. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sequencova, and good day to you all. I would like to thank all candidates for making themselves available today. These roundtables are an essential step in ensuring a fair, transparent, and merit-based process. This segment includes questions to the distinguished candidates on behalf of the coalition of civil society that works on matters related to the International Criminal Court. I will ask the candidates 3 questions. You will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. Please be sure to respect the time allocated. I will have to interrupt you if your time is up. As with the previous segment, we will rotate the order of your responses. The first question is, how can the registry contribute to improving the experience of victims who participate in ICC proceedings? Please mention 1 or 2 key priority actions you could take to improve the existing system and practices related to victims' participation. We will hear first from Mr. Hermosillo, then from Ms. McIntyre, followed by Ms. Musigo Morrison, Mr. Pam, and Mr. Zavala. Mr. Hermosillo, you have 2 minutes. Please, the floor is yours.
Gracias. Thank you very much. Considering that the Rome Statute establishes a higher relevance than for the victims through a single participation